Hello and welcome to this presentation entitled Knife Crime Investigation, Reactive and Proactive Approaches, prepared for the conference to enhance the UK criminal justice system. My name is Leisa Nichols-Drew and I'm an Associate Professor in Forensic Biology at Montfort University in Leicester. I'm also a Chartered Forensic Practitioner in Forensic Biology, and this was awarded in 2020 by the Chartered Society of Forensic Sciences. And in 2018, I was awarded my Churchill Fellowship. So to give you an overview of this presentation, I'll first of all explain my career background and my current role at Montfort University and why I've mentioned here the United Nations. And then I'll briefly discuss UK knife crime data, statistics and the situation. And this understanding was really important in helping me prepare my application for my Churchill Fellowship. And then I'll give you details of my experiences of the fellowship, pre, during and post activities. And then I'll share with you some similarities and differences between the UK and the countries that I visited on my travels. And then I'll end with reactive and proactive approaches that have come from my fellowship. So to give you an overview of my career background, my forensic science career began in 2000 with the former Forensic Science Service of the Home Office. I was based within the Evidence Recovery Unit of the Huntingdon Laboratory, and my role was an examination role, so I was a senior examiner and primarily biology examinations. So I'd undertake bodily fluid examinations from a range of offences, so homicide and violence, sexual offences, terrorism, armed robberies, cold case reviews, volume cases, so a range of different offence types. I was also chemistry cross-trained, and I'd also undertake the recovery of trace evidence as well. Along with this primary examination role, I would undertake technical training of colleagues, the judiciary, police officers in forensic awareness, and I was honoured to be a member of the technical training team, so writing technical training packages under the direction of Julie Allard, who was the principal scientist. And I'd also undertake audits of the laboratory and casework situation, and I was a quality advisor in alignment to ISO 17025 accreditation standards. And this role also required me to write and review standard operating procedures. And if requested, I would attend crime scenes, court and case review conferences. More recently, I wanted to undertake and maintain my examination skills so that I was proficient for my academic career, and so I undertook a role as an examiner within Cellmark Forensic Services at the Abingdon Laboratory, and this was up until 2019. So my institution as an academic, where I'm an associate professor, which is Montfort University, is a global hub partner of the United Nations, and we are aligned to the Sustainable Development Goal 16. So there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals altogether. The one that DMU is aligned to is 16, which is Peace, Justice and Strong Institutions. And this is really important because this was a supportive factor in my application, and DMU really encouraged me to apply for my Churchill Fellowship. And also we are honoured to have had Baroness Doreen Lawrence of Clarendon as our Chancellor up until January of this year, 2020. And we are also very privileged to have the Stephen Lawrence Research Centre on campus. And in the Research Centre, we celebrate the life and legacy of Stephen Lawrence. And we are also encouraged to undertake research into social justice, equality and inclusivity. So this was another important factor in supporting my application for my Churchill Fellowship. So if we briefly look at the current statistics of knife crime or sharp instruments, up until June 2020, so these are from the Crime Survey of England and Wales, released late October of this year, we can see that there has been a slight decrease in the statistics, and this is probably expected due to the COVID lockdown. From my casework experience, as I mentioned previously, I've experienced submission of knife exhibits and clothing damage examinations from a range of different offences, and I think that this chart here, although it's from 2018, does replicate the range of offences where we can experience knives. And I think it's important that we acknowledge this range of offences, as it can be reported in the media that knife crime is solely those offences that occur out in the street, so street-based violence, where from my experience I do believe that we also have to acknowledge the hidden knife crime. In the recent Home Office Homicide Index, when we look at the numbers of deceased homicide victims, 48% of females, and in 71% of cases where of those stabbings, they've occurred in the residential domestic setting, and 38% of the alleged perpetrators have been the partner or former partner of the deceased, of the victim. And so I think that this really does acknowledge that knife crime is across all offences and is across all different settings. And it's even represented quite clearly in these map diagrams. So when we look at 10 years ago, as I said, I was based in East Anglia laboratory of the Home Office, so in Huntingdon, Cambridgeshire, and reportedly low levels. But I think we can see definitely a decade later that we have this increase in knife, the rate of offences involving knives across the UK, and that this isn't an urban issue solely for cities, it's actually a rural issue too. And we have to appreciate that this could be due to county lines, but we also have to acknowledge the wider issues, that the fact that other agencies are impacted by knife crime, and that this is indeed a public health issue. And these are the current figures reported from NHS admissions relating to admissions of persons from assaults by a sharp object. And there's been many documents released from the government or other agencies relating to knife crime and the strategy, and we've had recent legislation relating to the Offensive Weapons Act of 2019. So having an understanding of legislation, data, statistics was really important in helping me prepare and communicate the issue in my application to the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust. So this is the title of my Churchill Fellowship, Targeting Knife Crime, a Forensic Scientist's Perspective. And I've included an image here of the knife angel, which was sculpted by the British Ironworks Centre. And I use this a lot in my lectures because I feel like the angel is gesturing with its palms outstretched as if to say, why do we have this issue? And this knife angel is constructed from 100,000 donated knives from knife amnesties around the UK, and the blades are dulled so that they're no longer sharp. Well, I think it's quite staggering when we look at the sculpture at just how many knives are in circulation. So what I wanted to undertake was an opportunity to compare my experiences as a practitioner within the UK to that of other countries, to see what we were doing and if we could learn and share from each other our experiences of practice. And so to do that, I used a very varied methodology. So I wrote to different institutions to see if I could visit their facilities, and sometimes I was invited to present and give lectures, and I was invited to attend mortuaries, crime scenes as well, and I undertook interviews with different individuals, and I was allowed to observe examinations while they were being conducted. So it really was a privileged opportunity. And I did have multiple objectives with this project. I wanted to primarily engage with experts in those other countries that did a role similar to what I did in the UK, and ultimately disseminate this knowledge on return to the UK so that I could share what I'd learned to hopefully improve the situation, in that I wanted to help aid detection and also prevention. And to do that, I had numerous research questions. But if you do listen to any of the Churchill Fellowships today, you'll realise that when you undertake this unique privileged opportunity, often the research questions change and they develop through your travels. So I've not listed all of my questions here because often I'd come away with more questions for the next visit. So the two countries that I visited were Canada and Australia, and the reasons why I chose these two countries were they had a similar size population to each other, although they're geographically vast. To me that was an interesting prospect. And also when I looked at data from those two countries, at the time I made my application, in Canada stabbing was the most common form of homicide, and in Australia bladed weapons were the most used. And they'd also undertaken legislative changes. So in Canada, there was legislation regarding flick knives on a mechanism, and in Australia, credit card knives. They had a similar law enforcement structure to each other, so a hierarchical structure, so local jurisdiction, and then a federal police force. So Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the Australian Federal Police. And they were both Commonwealth nations. And this was quite important because the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust had a Winston Churchill branch in Australia. And I also felt that they had an excellent research culture, the numbers of publications and a variety of research undertaken in those countries. And also I was and now am a member of the professional membership societies of those two countries. So the Australian New Zealand Forensic Science Society and the Canadian Society for Forensic Sciences. So the key themes that I set out to investigate were education and continual professional development, look at facilities and see if there was equipment being utilised that we could also utilise within the UK. I was keen to look at examination procedures and look at those, investigate quality and look at the standard operating procedures, and also look at the organisational structure of knife crime examinations. And when I wrote my report with these outcomes in mind. So to give you an overview briefly of the similarities with the UK and my experience, I was encouraged that accreditation was of paramount importance in those two countries and there was a quality focus involved. So CALA in Canada and NATA in Australia are the equivalent of the UCAS, UK Accreditation Service. Also, examination recordings were digital based or paper based, which is what gave me encouragement from my experiences of the UK. And I was also encouraged that examinations were similar to what were undertaken within the UK, including the examination of clothing damage. So I was encouraged that this is a valuable evidence examination, and I was keen to see the processes of this involved. And also training and competency processes, so the importance of proficiency and continual demonstration of your expertise. There were huge numbers of differences. I've already mentioned the law enforcement structure within those countries, but there were differences relating to forensic strategy of knife crime, so were clothing removed at scene in some countries, or attendance at the post-mortem of the forensic scientist, the processes of the scene investigations. So in some countries the crime scene investigators would undertake the blood pattern analysis. Really excellent equipment and facilities in the settings that I visited. So, and I'll mention that at the end. I was also interested in the laboratory examination processes involved in the different presumptive tests from my forensic biology background, and also different court preparation methods. So at the time when I went there, it seemed unusual to have video link contact to give evidence, and obviously after the year we've had this year with the COVID pandemic, that seems very frequently used. So to give you an overview of the reactive approaches, so one method of examination utilised in both Australia and Canada was the use of infrared light sources to undertake blood examinations. So if you've got a dark surface such as black clothing or maybe an area of a crime scene, this was widely used, and I feel that this is a huge difference compared to my experiences of blood examination practice within the UK. So in this process, a light source would be used, and that would cause the visualization of areas that could then be presumptively tested. So it doesn't remove the undertaking of chemical tests, it helps the examiner, and I felt that this was a very useful method of examinations and that this could help us in the UK. And it's surprising that we seem to utilise the ultraviolet spectrum and other light sources for undertaking examinations for cellular material, urine, semen, saliva, but at the opposing end of the electromagnetic spectrum, we are not utilising the infrared, and it's starting to change from discussions I've had with practitioners within the UK, but I feel that this practice could be widespread. One of the things that I wrote was this knife crime work process to give an overview of a procedural workflow, so both evaluative and investigative processes involved. So, and how all of the different examination requirements could link together. So finger mark recovery, DNA swabbing or sampling, intelligence from the type of sharp instrument. So I felt that this could be really useful. And also recording these dimensions and measurements of knives, discussions with examiners in both countries, I realised that there might be certain intelligence that we could yield from the weapons submitted to our laboratories, and these could be captured. So in particular, blade shape and blade tip shape as well, that could be significant, and also the types of packaging used, as demonstrated here, more of a movement towards cardboard packaging and avoidance of using plastic packaging for exhibits in both countries. And to give you an overview of proactive approaches, we know the amount of, as I've previously alluded to, the amount of knife offences within the UK, and these are just a sample of media articles. And my Winston Churchill Fellowship, actually, I started to question why we have knives with pointed tips, and these articles are from other experts within the criminal justice system, but also medicine, who'd questioned this as well. So I decided to form a collaboration of experts within the UK, and we undertook a clothing damage research study to compare knives with different shaped tips. So 2 conventional, so sharp blade pointed tips, and 3 novel shaped tip blades. We had 4 clothing garments, so to represent 2 upper, 2 lower clothing, so as that you might experience in casework, so t-shirt, jeans, faux leather skirt, woven jumper, and in total there were 300 downward stabbing motions. The knife was held in this position to give you an overview of an anterior view, posterior view, and this was used to maintain timing, force and velocity. And because I wasn't interested at this moment in time of anything other than the clothing damage, no simulants were used. And this eventually led to the publication, and all of the co-authors are listed here today, and 2 contributors to the conference today, Dr. Kelly Sheridan and Dr. Kevin Farrugia, are listed as co-authors. And this is a summary of the findings. The clothing garment fabrics are down the left, the knife and tip shapes are across the top, and as we can see here, one knife in particular was produced no damage, severance damage whatsoever, did not penetrate the clothing in all our tests. So that what we can conclude from this is that knife tip shape really could make a difference in preventing injury and clothing damage. So moving forward, because I don't feel personally that we're making a start, but I feel like there's more that can be done and we can possibly do this together. So here are some of the post activities that I've been involved with, but as I said, there's more to be done. So this is promising. I feel that this is a promising start, but I feel that we could do so much more together. And so I've listed just some of the agencies, experts, and that can be involved in this process. And that includes yourselves, the stakeholder and delegates from today's conference. I really hope that we can contribute and we can move forward together, because as I said, I feel like we've made a start, but there's more that can be done. So to summarise, there are apparent similarities, but there are also differences between practice of Australia, Canada and the UK. And to give you just two of my findings from my fellowship, one reactive is that infrared can assist us in UK blood examinations, and a proactive finding is that rounded knives, as demonstrated in our published research study, can prevent clothing damage and potential injury. So I'd just like to acknowledge all of my journal paper co-authors, the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust, my colleagues at Montfort University who supported me pre, during and post my travel fellowship, all of my hosts in Australia and Canada, and of course the Churchill Fellows who are coordinating the event today. You inspire me, and together I feel that we can make a difference. So thank you for listening, and please feel free to ask me any questions and feel free to contact me. Thank you.